clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you're on the air.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. I'm your host, Vicki Ross. We're here at Think Twice Radio, the home of the future, where Richard Wicca is producing the show. So thank you very much, Richard. And we're very excited to have a special show all about children and youth, and especially in this hour about schooling in the age of COVID. So I want to welcome our special guests, and we'll just go counterclockwise. That's what the indigenous people do. Go first to Dr. Wendy Mistretta, who is here from District Parent Coordinating Council, and from home where she's a mom. So hi, Wendy.
Good evening.
And Eve Shippens, who is a teacher in the Buffalo Public Schools. Hi, Eve.
Hi.
So and you know, we know this is a big conversation that people are having it. It's on the front page of the paper. People are talking about it every day at home, especially if they have kids and even if they don't, because it's just so important and it's so difficult. So maybe let's just start with, where are things now on day 3 of schools are open in person in Buffalo? Either one of you want to say what you know about what's going on right now?
You want to go ahead, Eve? Mine starts tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So all the more reason. Yeah, Eve, please.
So we'll let Eve go first, and then
Okay, so I'm a teacher at East High School, and I also have a child who I'm guardian of who goes to Bennett.
Right.
Who's I'm both a parent and a teacher right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we chose to have him to continue virtually, although it is a struggle because of our concerns over it still being the pandemic. I've returned in building to East. You know, for the most part, I think that the building was ready for us. There was a lot of preparation put into it. We had a good turnout the first day as far as attendance went, and it dropped off after that, actually. And not everyone who was eligible to return chose to return. And because I think that people are still concerned, and I think that kids want to return to what they're used to. And we're not returning to what any of us are used to. This is a brave new world. This is still pandemic, and people are still having to follow protocols about distancing, about not physically interacting. You know, I teach high school. You know, I'm not even supposed to get within 6 feet of my students. And so it's an interesting perspective, because they want to be in building. They want it to be exactly the way it was before. And I don't blame them, because I really miss that too. And I want it exactly the same.
Right.
So some of the kids and again, high school's a little different than elementary school. What I'm seeing with the high school kids is they just really want the return to normalcy, and it's not. So they're, you know, it's hard on them.
Right. Well, that is, and that's a very profound statement that I think we've all realized in some way, shape, or form. Well, first of all, it's far from over, but, and so that makes it all the clearer that things are not back to normal. And, you know, it's never going to be like this never happened, too. So there are changes that are going to be filtering through our society from the effects of this in all kinds of ways. But anyway, so that's a big point, and I think, you know, as you say, probably a lot of people didn't really realize how much that would be true. Wendy, what do you think about that, and where things how it look to you when you're going back? Is it tomorrow? You said
it's tomorrow. Yes.
Tomorrow,
So my son's a senior.
Right.
I have a junior and a senior.
Right.
And they're both at City Honors.
Right.
So my son goes back tomorrow for the first time for the second half of his senior year. He's actually done pretty well academically. So if we're come around to talking about what we can learn from this in the future, I think it'll be really interesting to talk about the kids who did do well and how we what that means and how we continue using that going forward, because there are some of that. So yes, he is going back primarily for the social. He knows it's going to be different. So we'll see when he's in the building how it feels. In his head, he knows. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because they have seen each other. Some people, they've done a couple friend things when the weather was nice and they could be outside.
Sure.
They haven't since. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, he goes back tomorrow. It's my daughter who doesn't get to go back.
Right.
Who academically needs it, but socially is kind of like, I'm okay. It's a little uncertain, but academically is really, really struggling. There's just some subjects that she is just not able. Just Algebra 2. I don't know how to teach her Algebra 2. She's not getting it remotely. All supports are still remote, except we found a tutor that's willing to do stuff in person, and that's starting to help. But it's really frightening to watch her struggle and not know what to do. And I think a lot of families, and I'm sure teachers too, are all just struggling, trying to be like, I want to help you, and I'm so limited. And what is this? How are we going to find ways to help better?
Right. Well, it's just such a very difficult situation wherever kids are learning. So there's distractions and difficulties in either situation, being there or not being there. So I know we've all been dealing with this now for quite some time, and that's part of it too. Is people are just tired, and so the ramifications. So I think when we think about what kids need, I mean, like we did Camp Peace Prince over the Zoom this year. It's the first time. So there were some, what if they call it pods, or, family units where people were gathered around the Zoom. So there was a little sociability with your family or your effective family. But so we still had that same issue about how to keep kids engaged over the Zoom. And I mean, luckily it wasn't, or at least to make it easier for us, it wasn't something that they're being tested on what they're learning, or they're forced to be learning. It was a program, it's social skills and peace and justice issues, communication, cooperation, etc. But it is challenging to keep people's interest, to make it compelling and everything else. And so, as you say, maybe if we want to talk a little bit about like what children or youth are doing well, and which ones are what makes it harder or easier remotely for kids.
One of the things, because I'm a high school teacher, so I have over 100 students on my roster. And that's something that I want to put out there, because a lot of parents, and I get it. Your kid is your kid, and you want your kid to have all that attention, special attention.
Right.
And I have 100 students.
Right.
And I would love to give kids special attention, but I have 100 students. And so I'm not always able to give that kind of attention that, and again, I've never been an elementary school teacher. I've been middle school, I've been high school. So elementary school teachers could tell you their version, and having the same group of kids all day long sometimes has its own unique set of challenges, but that contact with the family is not usually as hard, because it's a smaller group to, keep track of and whatnot. Like with my kids, I found both last year, which was a class my classes that I went out with last year, when we started the COVID quarantine.
Right.
I knew them well, but so many of them just dropped right off of the face of the earth when we went out a building. And, families in Buffalo, it's challenging if you don't have like, it's challenging for me. I'm in the city of Buffalo. I live in Black Rock, and my internet goes down.
Right.
My spectrum goes down all the time,
Right.
and bumps me in and out of these meetings, especially during the day when all businesses, all kids are on it. So, but a lot of families didn't have, internet,
Right.
didn't have Wi-Fi access, didn't have devices. And we go and we think that all these kids, like, because they're on their cell phone and they know how to use apps and all that, we're like, oh, they know how to use technology. No, they don't.
Right.
They know
Right.
how to use social technology.
Right.
There's
They-
a whole different thing when you're doing work on like when you're doing a Word document from your phone or making a
Right.
PowerPoint from your phone.
Right.
Completely different
And-
set of skills. And a lot of our kids didn't have necessarily up-to-date technology at home beyond their phone. And so, it was a challenging there. And also the other thing we don't think a lot about is space. So it's one thing, like, here I am. I'm actually in my bedroom because my family kept coming in and out of the living room. So I'm like, oh, let me hurry up and get out of here. I don't have a home office. I live in a cottage.
Right.
So it's either my bedroom or the living room. That's it. And so many of our kids are the bedroom or the dining room. Most of them are in their dining room. But the dining room is right next to the kitchen. Mom or dad is cooking in the kitchen while they're trying to learn. And then there's two other siblings somewhere scattered in the same room. So a lot of these things were really big challenges. All of the things that are challenges in our kids' lives normally, the pandemic just made it even harder.
So I want to say, I should have said right up front, you are two people who are so devoted to children and their education. I mean, and to children, to your own children, to everyone else's children, to making it work. And it is such a hard time right now. And as you describe all of that, I mean, I think I know, Wendy, what would you say about the same thing?
Yeah, you would think maybe, spending some time at home would actually be relaxing, but I've never been so stressed in all my life.
Right.
And honestly, my kids we're good here. My husband kept working the whole time. He already primarily worked from home because the headquarters for his business is in Rochester. So he's
Right.
already primarily working from home.
Right.
We
Right.
never lost income. I was already primarily home.
Right.
So that kind of transition we didn't have. But yet the stress of the not knowing for everyone is just sometimes overwhelming.
Right.
And then there's the other responsibility. So yes, my family might seemingly be okay. I'm still really worried, but we'll physically be fine, and we'll figure it out the rest. It's so many of the other kids. So with the district parent coordinating council,
Right.
with the representation from the schools, so hearing all of the other stories, and the biggest concern, I know Eve talked about the kids that went off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kids that I'm sure that keep us both up at night.
Right.
The not knowing where they are and then not knowing how to reach them because there's a bad way to do it. I don't want someone knocking on the door asking where their kids are. I mean, I want some like supportive outreach
Right.
to help the family and not just focusing on that the kid isn't in the building. I mean, those kind of things that I think as a community are really important conversations of how do we help our families heal.
Right.
While we are also dealing with whatever trauma we have in our own lives, is really. I'm glad to have opportunities like this one, Vicki, to talk to people, because I think it's really easy sometimes to be in our bubble, and there are times when I like to just shut that bubble and just stay in it, but we
Right.
can't. And so how do we have these conversations about, like you were saying, what are the obstacles and what are the opportunities?
Right.
And then where do we go with those is, I think, really important conversations for us to be having.
Well, some of the things that you're both bringing up is just back to the broader context. So here it is. So people are having losses. People are passing. You know, how many kids have had their grandparents pass? You know, how many kids are not seeing their grandparents? How many, you know, what families are going through? What about the economics? What if about people who are on unemployment and all the uncertainty, the financial stress, the, you know, all the raft, the mental health, the isolation, all the things that we're saying people are having such a hard time with. And then take that we know kids are more vulnerable. You know, they need what they need, and the effects are longer lasting in general. Not to say that kids aren't resilient and that, you know, that people won't get what they need, but it is such a hard time, and emotionally, and every other kind of way, for kids to have all that going on and then try to concentrate in the dining room on a phone. Or and that the thing about the phone too, we've come with that too. Do kids have has Buffalo Public Schools been able to provide kids with like a computer or something more than a phone? Because I know when we did Peace Jam, if kids are on a phone, it's so hard. I know for myself. You know, when you're on a phone, there's a lot of things that are so much harder on a phone than they are on a computer.
I think that's one thing that we really can commend the Buffalo Public Schools, especially considering the fact that Buffalo is an underfunded district.
Right.
That they made such an investment and such a push when we first went out for COVID last year to get devices in the hands of children. They didn't have enough for everyone to begin with, and you couldn't get them anywhere because all districts all across the country were doing the same thing. Plus, anyone who had personal money was doing the same thing.
Right.
So it took a while, but they also have worked out deals with Spectrum, are paying for things through Spectrum, are getting hotspots for kids. So you see a lot of that going on. So that's been very positive. They've also like really pushed food out to families as well, which, you know, so you're covering some real basic needs that schools have provided for kids. They put a lot of time and effort in that. But you're still seeing, again, because we only have limited devices and limited technicians.
Right.
You're seeing that as kids break these devices, which are going to happen,
right, or
if they're going between multiple households during the course of the week, you know, or sometimes just a software issue isn't working right, and it takes a little bit of time to fix. That we're seeing that kids have to then get on these devices, like cell phones. So. I have kids who come to class through the cell phone, and then we have to adapt what we're doing because the cell phone doesn't work the same way.
Right.
But the district has done a really good job at getting devices out to families, but keeping them maintained is not easy.
And I think too, we should say that the district has had some really good community partners. I don't know that we would have been able to do what we've been able to do without the longer partnership we've had with Say Yes. Because Say Yes already had these community partners at a table. So it was really, you know, working with Mission Ignite, with some of the devices, and the community foundations and the city of Buffalo and all that to help with the setting up these places for people to get food and then the parent groups that have all stepped up. I mean, there's 5 of us that are just part of district parent groups, and a lot of the volunteers have stepped up to help get things to people who couldn't come get them. So we were really, really fortunate that we had some of that stuff already established that I think made the transition easier than it would have been and could have been.
Right. And actually, I think some of that happened in very organic kinds of ways where, I mean, other, you know, people who knew that what's happening would tell other people. For example, excuse me, we were told about the efforts to get food out to kids. So we publicized it, et cetera. so that, people who want to volunteer, could I just go help delivering food to people who can't get it from the school, is a big thing. And so there've been so many pieces. And as you say yes has absolutely been just more than a lifesaver for the district in so many ways, for the children around here in so many ways.
That's right. They helped coordinate the virtual learning labs that we really needed, provided some of that support to bring together. I mean, they're not offering the labs, but they're coordinating the agencies that are. So that was a help. Now, I knew the one I was trying to mention to the community group, the Mutual Aid Network.
Right.
That was, the group of people who came together. So,
right. The mutual aid.
When it came down to it, there were a lot of people who really stepped up to help our families. Thank God. Right.
Well, so many people are needing more help right now, and I think that's it. That's the bigger context for this conversation. So I want to go back to, and I really appreciate that you both brought this up in different ways during the conversation. The emotional context for kids and how to help meet those needs. What can we do? Are there initiatives going on, or are there efforts, or even things that people can help with as things stand to help kids and families get some of their needs met, or get some individual attention, or what kinds of things that you each know about?
I think the unique thing there too is that in some ways that going home helped some kids and then hurt some others.
Right.
So I'm sure I saw that here with each of mine. So
right.
My son actually likes being remote. He hated the fishbowl thing that they would do in some classes where he had to sit in the middle of the room and talk. He hated that. But now he's at home and he talks more, and he's, because it's easier for him. Right. Whereas, and then my daughter, who felt like there was a lot of drama, also enjoyed that from being home. So she had no problem talking out in class.
Right.
But she does not miss some of the drama that goes along with being a teenage girl.
Right. So she doesn't miss it from being she's not missing that part of school.
No, she's not missing that part of school.
But she's the one, she has more of an, and by the way, as if I didn't know your kids at all. So I'm not gonna, but for, like you said, when it's a subject that's tough for you, then we need that sort of, that immediate in-person. There's something that can be, communication is just better in person. So, and especially for, I don't know, what other classes besides algebra, but there are different things where just being there, or actually seeing it, or actually doing it, or having somebody being able to show them what you're talking about can make a difference. So I think that's another factor, as you said, the different learning styles. But in terms of the isolation, back to, it depends on what is the family situation at home, and whether you're really seeing other kids, whether there's another way, and whether you're connecting with them.
I just would like to point out, and I'm not saying this is everywhere. Saying that in my school, we've had our social workers and guidance counselors have paid home visits. Not as a got you, but as I'm checking on these kids. They've been doing it all through this pandemic, making home visits. My one assistant principal made a Facebook page where, to interact with the kids, that's where you get them, because actually that's where you get some of them is through social media.
Right. Sure.
And so we've done a pretty good job of locating our off-the-grid kids and keeping in touch with them, and also, offering them support to both them and their families. And again, the partners who are with BPS, Say Yes has done, still offers their counseling service. and that's done, through the telemed thing, the way it would be for any of us. And so there's still those supports in place. Also, we've had a tremendous amount of opportunities for professional developments as teachers and staff, to deal with, social emotional needs during remote learning. So some of that was required, some of it was optional, but there's been a lot of opportunity to kind of understand this and to move forward as teachers. And the lion's share of my coworkers have done a fantastic job. They send, some of them, honestly, and I'll say this, some of them, they just blow me away. I don't know how they do it, because I'm like, you have 100 kids too. I don't know how you do all that.
Right.
They've sent personal, like my one friend sent everyone something for Christmas.
Wow.
And it was just a card with something small in it, but 100 kids, they sent that out. And I said Christmas because that's what I celebrate, but I should say Christmas for the holidays.
Right, for whichever holidays, yes.
Because they were very careful to not be, name it, because we do have a lot of children at my school who are not Christian, who are Muslim. So, they were very careful about what they sent out to be appropriate for everyone.
Right.
But, so there's people stepping up and doing these wonderful things. And I think that most people right now, it's the pandemic. It's hard on all of us. The grown folks in this scenario, we've lost a lot of people too.
Right.
So we're losing those relationships. We know people who have died.
Right.
People who are seriously sick.
Right.
But I think that for the most part, everyone is stepping up as much as they can, as often as they can. I haven't seen anyone take this as I don't have to work hard, or I don't have to make these relationships. I've seen people get so creative and so willing to really fill in the gap as much as they can.
Right. Right. Well, you're making me think of the, I used to go to the meetings, and now I'm just still copied on it. But before I became the director, the mental, emotional, and behavioral health group for the district has done a lot of work. Back to what you said, Wendy, with the partner groups, with Children and Adolescent Treatment Center, and different groups that are offering either mental, emotional, or behavioral health opportunities or information or connections, or just or helping the staff to do some of that. So some of the trainings that you're talking about, I'm sure, are coming through via that group.
And I don't know how the families of younger kids do it. I know, because Eve and I are both coming from she works with the older kids. I have older kids.
Right.
I can't imagine if mine were little again and I was doing this. Because I remember when they were little during the surprise, that October storm.
Right. Yep.
And I was not in town. I was somewhere else where there was literally nothing to do, and my kids were little, and it was like 1 week. So I don't know how that there's a whole nother set of challenges with those families.
Right.
That I admire, that they're, because we were really, everyone last year on March 15th became a teacher assistant.
Right.
So it's most of us weren't prepared. So it's been that kind of a real challenge too. I know one of the things that we're doing, my DPCC is our next business meeting. Since it's February, we're doing kind of a Valentine,
Good.
love yourself kind of theme.
Great.
With another one of the parent groups, the Community Health Worker Parent Association, about self-care. So, kind of that idea of, when you're on an airplane, give yourself oxygen before you help others.
Right. Exactly.
So we're going to take a little bit of time next Tuesday and talk to anyone. That's not just, it's open for anyone who wants to come in and just kind of talk about how the adults support each other so we can better support our kids too.
Right. Well, maybe we'll all go.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. No, it sounds, well, it's so important. It really, really just what people need is we do need to remember that always. And as you point out, for people with younger children, well, of course, the younger children need more individual attention for learning, need more individual attention, period. So, and then you've got the challenge for people who are working at home and trying to get the things done at home, which, of course, back to working remotely, you know, again, for some people very easy, or in some ways makes things much easier. And in some ways it makes it so much harder, especially depending on the job, and including just the organizational, the spatial issues, all the things that we've just been talking about. And then if you have that your children need you and you're trying to do a job, you know, well, what can people do? You know, it's a real challenge to, you know, for people, whether, you know, whatever the situation, but especially when the children are younger. So it's just something to think about, you know, how do those families, how do they manage, or is there a way of their getting a little more help? Is that something that's been talked about, do you know, for people with younger children? Or how, have you talked
I
to
don't know, because we can't do anything in person. So,
Right.
you
Sure.
know, I think about, you know, like special ed, there are certain, what they
Right.
would call respite services, but that
Right.
kind of stuff can't even be offered now because we can't do anything in person.
Right.
And maybe Eve knows more what the schools are trying to do too. I don't know. I don't know how we,
Well, I'm going to sound awful to say this,
No,
but you know that whole self-care thing?
Yeah.
I
Can't
follow
be done.
I follow
Joking.
the overall, like, there are people above my pay grade who are who really study this and focus on this, and I try not to.
Right.
I try and keep it in the scope of what I have to handle,
Right.
because this has been really difficult. Like, personally,
Absolutely.
I didn't deal with the adjustment very well. You know, I was a little bit freaking out when we first went out of building in March.
Sure.
As my students would attest to, if they were here, they'd be like, "Oh yeah."
Right. Right.
And then, you know, we've had a series of things in my own family. My dad actually
Right.
was hospitalized
Right.
twice for mental health issues,
Right.
because
Right.
he was isolating, and he didn't handle. You know, that was hard for him.
Right. Right.
Because he was isolating from the whole family, and all the fears, and being an older person, it just, you know, so he was hospitalized twice for a total of 9 weeks between the two times. And then my daughter's father, my ex-husband, he actually passed away in
Right.
November of
Right.
COVID-related complications because he had pre-existing conditions.
Right.
And so I keep my focus on, like, what is it I have to do about COVID? What is it that is safe for my family? And what is it that I can do to help, you know, the people I'm responsible for? But this whole, like, overarching plan, it's like, I know there's people who are responsible for it. I know that they're working very, very
Right.
hard. I know that there's lots of different opinions on what's best. And one of the things I have to say about it is we have to remember that this is a pandemic, and we haven't had anything like this in this country in 100 years.
Right. Right.
And there's losses to learning that's going on now. But we need to remember that when we're able to start really gaining again, it'll happen.
Right.
People, like, teachers are hungry to be out there with their kids again. Trust me, we just want to be safe. We want the kids safe. We want us to be safe. We want the families at home to be safe. But it's like everyone wants a return to normalcy, wants to be working hard at this, you know, and this is just a disruption to normal life that it is what it is. And wishing it wasn't this way, or hurrying it up, or worrying about the things that we can't control, you know, like, It's okay.
Right.
We'll get the kids caught up, and maybe, and I might offend people by saying this, maybe some of the standards need to be lowered for a period of time. And the other thing is, honestly, if a kid takes longer to get to high school graduation eventually because of the pandemic and what they were going through personally, if they need an extra year or so, it's not the end of the world. You know,
Right.
we don't, you know, we all work for almost our whole lives anyway, 30 years or more. You know, the world is different. Like, we're in such a rush to get started that if somebody needs an extra year, eventually, it's not the end of the world.
God,
it's
no.
okay.
No. Of course.
And we need to just remember that, all these things, we're going to cross those bridges and keep on doing the best we can. And we shouldn't get so worried about all these things that kids are losing, because we're going to come back strong when we can, and we're going to make up. And if it takes longer, it takes longer. Like nobody was pushing their kids to walk when they were babies.
Right.
Kids take as long as they take. And so this is a natural disaster that we've never seen in our lifetimes. And it's going to take as long as it takes. And it'll be okay. The world will keep on going.
Right.
And we'll have successful career people and doctors and lawyers and scientists and politicians and all the stuff we need. It'll come.
Right, absolutely. And actually, what I was going to say is, you need to be taking when we were talking about self-care, is your self-care. As your self-care for each one of us and for any of us, because we can't give what we don't have. And back to if you're traveling with children or other dependents, take care of your needs first. So that finding a way to somehow get what we need, to give ourselves the space, or to not, and certainly to not worry about things that we can't do. And the old serenity prayer stuff, the things that we can't do anything about, those are the things that we can't do anything about. They need, and to recognize what we can do something, what we can't, and then go ahead. It's just such a critical skill. And actually, I think for all of what you said, absolutely agreed, because the life is long, and those, it's not a race. It doesn't have to be a race. We are a human race, but that doesn't mean we have to race through our lives like trying to hurry. In fact, I just was telling Wendy I was so sorry that I am too much of one who's always racing to try harder and harder to get all these things done. So I think we want to remember that, and that kids will, just like our strengths and our weaknesses are so connected, even though kids are losing something, they're also, as hard as this will help kids gain certain things, in terms of perspective, in terms of wisdom, in terms of being with the family, or just a different perspective that will affect all of us.
It's actually interesting that you say that, because my son, since he's graduating and heading off to college, and my daughter a year later, this is bonus time to me.
Right.
I like having my kids around.
Sure.
I like spending time with them. I don't know how much longer I'll get to do that.
Yes.
So, and it's interesting too, the whole idea of the rethinking standards. I think that is the opportunity. Really, is Algebra 2 necessary?
Right.
Is a Regents diploma? When I graduated, there's still the two different diplomas.
Right.
Is a Regents diploma actually necessary? I think these are really good conversations for us to continue to have. When our kids are graduating, are our numbers being limited because of artificial limitations? So that's kind of an interesting conversation that I hope we'll have. The big thing that we're talking about is making sure that all of the voices are engaged in the conversations, so that other people aren't making those decisions for us. So how do we, have those conversations and really look at all this?
Right. And that is so critical, that everybody's voice is being heard. And I think that's one of the things that we always need to be bearing in mind in decision making. That the people who are most affected have to be at the table, that the children, the youth, they should be consulted. They should be, and I would say, maybe this is also an opportunity in this way. Yes, standards, yes, certain things that people need to know that are building blocks. But, I love so much of the learning that happens when, self-directed learning. We want kids to be, and people, lifelong learners, to be excited about learning, that they don't feel they know everything, that they always want to be learning, that they know how to investigate and, research or try new things or experiment with things, and go where their interest leads them to. So maybe this is an opportunity to help kids do some of that, to help our schools to accommodate more of that.
You know what? That brings up one of the things that you brought up before that we didn't really dive into, which is like, what have we gained out of this, educationally? I'm about to be, it's about to be my 20th anniversary of starting teaching. I started in March of 2001.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. It's crazy. It's like, it feels like so long ago and like yesterday. But as a veteran teacher who, I've been teaching mostly environmental classes for this is my 5th year doing it.
Great.
And I'm a 20-year teacher. Honestly, to teach the way that I've taught for years is really easy for me. Doesn't take hundreds of hours of planning or grading. I have it down. My puppy is being bad. So what this pandemic has forced me into is learning things on the computer that I just did not invest in. Because I know that the kids were learning the subject matter well, the way I was teaching. So there wasn't a need for me to go deep into the technology. But, and honestly, I'm old enough. I mean, I'm not going to date either of you, but all 3 of us are old enough where we didn't grow up with a computer in our living room. Nobody did.
No. Don't ask me when I got one either. But anyway.
Yeah. So I didn't necessarily feel like these skills were necessarily the most important skills. But then when the pandemic happened and the kids were lost on how to use this technology because they're also not growing up with a computer in their living room.
Right.
That I'm like, hold on a second. When they go to college, they're expected to be very comfortable on computers.
Right.
When they get lots of different jobs, they're expected to be comfortable on the computer. And this is a 21st century skill that I just was not valuing enough.
Right.
And then the pandemic said, like, hold on, this is something you need to value more.
Right.
And so I know that this is going to change the way when we are fully back.
Right.
This is going to change the way I do certain lessons because I want my students to leave my class feeling like they're well prepared for the next step. And whichever way that they go in life, I want them to feel well prepared. And I want them to be very good at getting them to be opinionated and grounded in fact and science to back up their opinions.
But yes. I want facts. We want facts.
Yeah, real facts, science facts.
Yeah, not alternative facts or anything like that. Yes.
But this is a new skill that I know that it's like I know that I need to add this in.
Oh, media literacy too. Media literacy, please. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's part of using the internet more, right?
Absolutely.
You have to understand what you're looking at. Like what kind of site are you looking at?
Right.
So it's funny because my son actually wants to study computer science.
Oh,
So
cool.
so he'd already decided that. And I'd already been thinking he's taking his first computer science class this year, his senior year.
Uh-huh.
I think I did basic computer earlier than that in the 80s.
Really?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow.
I was already struggling with why is it taking the district so long? And I'm sure
Right.
part of it was we didn't have the devices, and now we do.
Sure.
So I'm really hoping that this is one of the opportunities too, that when we go back and we're looking at the curriculum, that we are introducing computer science and technology at much younger ages for our kids, especially since we have the program at Bennett now. So
Right.
how can we have someone who wants to go into the technology program, I think it's at Bennett, how do they know they want to do that if they haven't been exposed to it when they're younger? So I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out in the school district and how it impacts my son and his potential, because we know a lot of kids change their mind,
Right.
but potential career
Sure.
in the future. This could have a really interesting impact on what he studies.
Well, and then again, the changes that we're going to see, I think we're going to see more people working at home. There's going to be more working remotely. So that self-discipline to do it, or the computer skills to do it, or the finding the way to do it, that works for you, developing those techniques, and also the other opportunities. So I want to say, now, when we finish this, we're going to talk about, in the other talking piece, we'll talk about Peace Jam. And Peace Jam last year, when we were doing, so we're thinking, well, what are we doing for our field trip? Well, I was just like, I knew what I said, what we have to do. We're going to Kenya, we're going to, Nepal, we're going, so we had wild field trips. And so I think this year we're going to do Camp Peace Prince Explores the World. So, which will be very much fun. But that's an opportunity that, it just wouldn't have come up that way, if it wasn't for the working remotely. So not to say that we don't need to be and want to be and find a way, we'll find our way back to normal at a certain, but some of these changes have opened up new worlds or new ways. So it'll be some kind of hybrid when we come out the other side of this.
I hope too, when we're looking at the ways that technology will continue to help with the mental health.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of people are able to, who might have been not had the confidence to go in person and get some supports,
Right.
are finding it easier to find some supports, the telemed kind of stuff. So hopefully there's more support for that too, and it makes it easier for people who should get help, but we're nervous about getting help, to continue to get the support they need.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And it's such a critical part of it, because people can't do well when there's too much else going on.
Yeah, there's just so much grief and trauma from this past year that I
Right.
think all of us could probably
Right.
use some more than
And that was true even before that, mental health issues. We all have mental health issues in different times and ways. Sometimes they can be very severe and clear. Sometimes it's not sometimes, and then it is at other times. And that's over the course of the lifespan. But, it's certainly, it's got to be part of the conversation and part of what we're looking at for whole needs and holistic learning. So learning how to deal with those things is part of it. Well, you're going to say something, Eve.
Yeah, I also think when we return to normal, which I hope we don't exactly do.
No, I don't think we will. I don't think we can, and we don't want to. But go ahead.
Right. Well, I don't think that we do. There's so much even though we've been isolated, and that's been very stressful, and even though there are people struggling to hit basic needs, and we definitely know that
Right.
that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
Also, the pace of life has slowed down for so many of us, and
Yes.
that's a positive.
Oh God, yes.
And that's a positive. I think the kids who are coming up, especially the older ones, I don't think they're going to be okay with that same level of intensity and pressure to always be active and doing things. And I think that, maybe, and I'm not minimizing anyone's negative circumstances or tragedy,
Right.
because we know
Right.
we
No, no.
we hear that side a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that one of the benefits that we got out of this is I think that people are going to demand that their time be respected a little bit more, and that they have a little bit more autonomy over how they spend their lives, and it's not just constantly pushing.
Right. Right. And actually, that little side bit of that, which is, again, of reduced transportation pollution, which has been, another big, that the earth can breathe, so maybe we have time to breathe a little bit. So, we're actually, oh my God, we really are almost done. So, so when we think about sort of, let's just focus on sort of needs and next steps, things that you want people to sort of, maybe there's two parts to that, really. The needs and next steps, and what you want people to remember out of what you think is something to really focus on for each of you, to the people who are listening.
So we talk about getting caught up,
Mm-hmm.
and that won't happen without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at, it's the second half of this year, we're not done yet. So
Right.
how do we finish this year?
Right.
Where are the kids, and are there nets? And then what are we going to do? And the resources we're going to need, because as Eve said, Buffalo Public Schools doesn't have enough resources
Right.
to really to catch up a year.
Right.
And whatever that looks like, even if it's not the definition, not exactly caught up, exactly what, but I think you guys know what I
Right.
mean. Like
Yeah,
there
sure.
has to be some kind of plan. There's been learning loss. Our kids have to be able to read, that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Right.
What is the plan? What resources do we need? How do we work together to get those?
Right.
That to me is a concern
Yes.
of
Yes.
where's the plan to make a plan?
That is so important. Absolutely. So we need to work together on that. And so that means getting involved, right? I know there's a few
And
places.
whatever level. So if it's in
Sure.
your home,
Mm-hmm.
if it's in your school, if it's in a community organization, wherever it is, if it's your next door neighbor, who around might need a helping hand. Every single one of us, this is one of the things that we say about parents is every single parent has skills and talents, every single one.
Right. Right.
Parents
Absolutely.
are partners, not people in need of services. So what do we have as an individual and as a family? Where do we need help? Where can we offer help? And just starting from there and going up and seeing what skills and talents we have that we can share for our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Wendy. That is so true. And Eve, what are some things you want people to come away with or to do?
I think honestly, there's some next steps that have to do with putting pressure on the state, the elected officials at the state education department, the Board of Regents, about, this pandemic really showed, disparities. We need to look at testing, certainly for this year, but maybe a year out into the future.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be better resourced.
Right.
That we should not be expected to do all of this without the resources that we need. And that includes not just resources in the schools, but resources for the families and communities. One of the resources we need, we know that we need vaccines,
Right.
and vaccine sites in the city.
Right.
The staff, we're all 1B, and we're eligible to get vaccines. But some of our workers are still low-income workers who do not have good transportation.
Right.
And some of our county sites are, where I went, it was a 40-minute drive from my house.
Ooh.
And And, you know, our schools need to be set up not just to vaccinate staff, which we do every year for the flu, but we need to be able to assist the community to make sure our elderly population is vaccinated. And then once it's rolled out to other groups, like just make sure that we're getting in the city the resources that we need. The suburban areas are pretty good at advocating for themselves. And so I think our city, we just need to realize that, you know, we need to advocate for what our students and our families and our staff, you know, we all need to be safe because this isn't the suburbs. The school buildings are not modern, are not completely up to date. We already have problems of under-resourced, overcrowded rooms. So we need to realize that, you know, it's going to be a while before the virus isn't an issue.
Right.
So to make sure we're getting these resources from the state directly to our schools and make sure that there's some of the pressure is alleviated by not having these state tests, at least this year, but probably into next year, to give kids time and the district time to make these plans and get us back up to where we need to be.
So I want to say, well, that is something that the Western New York Peace Center will definitely partner with both of you on working on. We already do, about where the resources need to go. And I want to say, people first, people and the planet. That's what we often talk about. So we'll work on that. So it's been so great having you both here. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thanks so much. Thank you. Very
Thank
grateful.
you.
That was wonderful. So here, wait. Yeah. Very, very good. Very good. Thank you both very much. I think that was great. And I'm not kidding. I think we have some real opportunities for it, because I love to talk about that topic. You know, move the money. So this is where it needs to go, and especially for our children. So
I think this is great.
yeah, I think it is too. Thank you both
Right.
so much.
Thank
Big
you.
hugs, big non-COVID hugs to both of you. It's great
You
to
too.
see you.
All right.